Order the study session of Mayor and City Council meeting 4:45 Wednesday, June 6, 2018 here at City Hall Complex. Would you please rise and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? George, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Thank you. Number 3, presentation on presentation on open space, bike and walking trails in Monte Carlo flood basin. Mr. Bachiller.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, appreciate the opportunity to present an update on the project that has been moving forward in the Monte Carlo flood control basin. As you recall, several months back, a gentleman, Edgardo from the OS3 nonprofit local bike group here, approached the council requesting that the council consider looking into development of that flood control basin. So the directive back to staff was to come back with, some kind of ideas or plans that could potentially work out in the best interests of all those concerned. So we went ahead and did that. So let's go ahead and move on. So these are existing conditions within the Monte Carlo flood control project. It's 15 acres of city-owned property, and as you see this, the property actually looks just like that. So obviously there's some use being taken advantage of out there. Most of this access is by probably unauthorized off-road vehicle use. It is closed off at the very end of Sonora Street, so there's other access points that we'll kind of talk about here later on in the presentation. But the layout of the basin itself is actually pretty nice. It's kind of serene, it's calm, and it lends itself for some opportunities that we're going to talk about here. So the main goal is to expand and develop the flood control basin, prioritizing the 6 items that are listed there. So we want to make sure that we are going to address trails for walkers and runners. We want to create mountain biking opportunities as well as a bike park of sorts that would help young kids develop their biking skills so that they can use a mountain biking trail. We want to maintain the property's flood control function without disturbing it. I do want to note at this time that Mr. Hayes from the Flood Control District from Santa Cruz County has been very involved in the project. He's given us some great insight. So we didn't want to disturb anything that would somehow not comply with the function of that basin to start with. And then we want to incorporate the open space into the city's parks and recreation system. And as I mentioned earlier, there are places of access that will need to be addressed, unauthorized access. This was one of the main concerns that the OS3 bicycle group brought forward, was that there was lots of trash and illegal dumping going on back there. So we believe by developing this area into an open space recreational use, just the mere presence of more individuals, that we would create, some oversight, and hopefully this would be somewhat taken care of and addressed, and it would no longer happen. And then this kind of advances the city's community and economic development goals. As you remember, one of the city goals from the strategic planning meeting that occurred months ago, I think last September, one of the city goals was to expand open space and parks. So this meets that goal. In addition, it also was one of the initiatives, strategic planning initiatives for my department on expanding and on recreational opportunities. So this will lend itself to accomplishing those goals. So this is kind of what it kind of looks like for now. Well, if I can orient you a little bit. So the entire white border is the actual property boundary. All the area within that white line, that off shade of green, that is the property we're talking about. Off to the left, you'll see a little box there that references a parking area. That is the very end of Sonora Drive. Okay, and we would create parking opportunities there for the users of this open space. So as you look at the diagram, the red dots are what is pretty much already existing. So that's all of those roadways that you saw on the existing conditions. So improving these roadways to accommodate walkers and hikers and runners, even bicyclists, wouldn't take a huge effort because they're pretty much already there. The yellow line is what would be the proposed mountain bike trail. Now this trail would have to be constructed. It kind of follows along the contours of the property, kind of on the hillside, so to speak. But that is what that yellow line depicts. In the center of the basin, we would take advantage of whatever water harvesting opportunities would be available to us. And then you can also see that there would be incorporated into the park a mountain bike skills area. And that would be beginner level to start with. As time would go by, if we would see that participation and the need to expand and make that a little bit more difficult, then we have plenty of space there to expand into. So the slide I just showed you would incorporate what we believe are the probably phase one or the primary elements of the project. These would be future opportunities or phase two of the project based on how we would see the area being used. So some of the amenities that would be included we would include a landscape picnic area you can see off there to the right. There would be areas within the basin in the center there where we would actually have water harvesting demonstrations. And then we would take advantage of some educational opportunities with signage as it relates to the native flora and some of the natural vegetation that's out there already. We would incorporate an exercise station around the entire loop. And then we would expand on the bicycle skills area as well. Depending also, again, on use and demand, we may need to create a bigger area on the outside of the facility. Just off the parking area, you'll see that little orange circle. We could potentially develop and create a little picnic area there for larger groups. So what would we actually do? I kind of mentioned already. These aren't the actual pictures of the basin itself, but it looked like this. So we could go in and actually improve the existing roadways that are there already without too much problem. and that's what we would do on the top picture. Then you'll see on the bottom is an example of what a single track mountain bike trail looks like. Those will have to be constructed. We do have commitments and lots of support from the OS3 bike group as well as other local groups. We're also looking to seek support from AmeriCorps and get some grants. They do provide assistance in trail building type of projects, so we would be reaching out to them as well. So as far as the trails and the multi-use paths, this is what we would propose to complete in phase 1. We'd also improve the parking area so that bicyclists, hikers, walkers, runners have better access to the facility. And then you can see down there on the bottom where we would try to incorporate some type of educational opportunities and demonstrations for water harvesting potential. So this would all take place in those initial elements of the project as we move forward. This is kind of an idea of what a beginner level type of bicycle park looks like. Based on what John Hayes informed us, so long as we use the soil from within the basin itself, we're not impacting the purpose of the basin, the flood control basin. So he says, but if you add stuff from the outside, you also have to take that much out of the basin. So in general, we probably would not we'd probably just use whatever is available there. We feel that there's enough soil at this time to be able to accomplish that. Obviously, we would also incorporate proper signage. And we're also working with the legal department to come up with an ordinance that would restrict and or prohibit use of off-road vehicle use within the area. So as we look to the future a little bit, these are pictures that were taken in Arroyo Chico Greenway Park in the city of Tucson. These amenities that you see, these little rest areas, seating areas, as well as improvements to the walking paths, and then the bike park as well. These were all developed within a flood control basin there in Tucson. So a number of our team members actually went and walked the facility. They took these pictures, and it just gives us ideas on how we can potentially add these types of amenities in the future to that open space at the Monte Carlo Basin. These are our team members. OS3, whom I have to give credit to. They were the organization that brought this idea and the desire to want to move forward with this project to the City Council. I know they've been in the Mayor's office numerous times for many years probably. So I have to give them credit that we've come this far just because of their persistence and their desire to want to get this done. City of Nogales, we couldn't have done it without the support of the City Manager's Office, Planning and Zoning, Engineering, Parks and Rec. We've also reached out to the National Park Service. They have been huge in helping us design and put this whole plan together. We do have a grant that we'll be submitting, if we haven't already, for future National Park Service participation so that we can complete the design and have a cost estimate as well. Santa Cruz County has been really huge and very supportive of this. John Hayes has been a wealth of knowledge for us, and we're happy that he's on board. U of A Water Resources and Sonoran Institute as far as water harvesting techniques. So we're tapping into them as well.
Good.
We'll also get the U of A Cooperative Extension to tap into the AmeriCorps troops, as I mentioned earlier. So what's next? So today we're presenting to council just the conceptual park and the design, or just the open space. Next step is we'll coordinate some public meetings to get additional input from the general public. Hopefully we'll get a lot of people from the Monte Carlo neighborhood area. As I mentioned, we have prepared a grant to the National Park Service so we can work towards final design of the project. And once that's completed, we'll present the final draft to the council for approval, and then we'll implement the plan. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Yes, go ahead, Councilman Lucero.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcel, great presentation. It looks like you put a lot of work and effort into it. Very impressive. I think that's great for the area. Things that I would like you to also consider is on the, I hate to be a detractor, but these kinds of things always bring liability up at some point. So if you can start working with our risk pool to start looking at doing just a risk assessment on some of the things that you're looking at. The barriers to keep people in and out, lighting, signage, et cetera, just make sure that whatever we put in there doesn't create any more risk than we need to. But looking at the city of Tucson one, for example, it was fairly open, and then I guess the concern is when you have, the cable barriers, especially if people are riding around with bikes, that's not a good combination. And then the parking lot, lighting is also comes to question if you're going to have people park in there, make sure that there's adequate lighting, and then with the signage, make sure that whatever signage we put absolves ourselves from any potential liability. But overall, I think it was a great presentation. Look forward to seeing that happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilman Morona.
Thank you, Mayor. Marcel, again, great presentation, and I like the partnerships that you've gathered. It's an array of partnerships that'll make that park very successful. Just when you go into the parking spaces and the lighting and everything, make sure you get some input from the neighbors there, just to make sure that they're in accord so we don't get. And I'm noticing in your budget here, did you put any financial funding aside for this year?
We don't know what
The cost
to even expect for this at this point in time. I believe the initial elements, we don't feel that there will be hard costs. It would be more in-kind type of costs that we would incur. Like I mentioned, the roads are already there. We just need to improve them, clean them up a little bit. So I think that the initial elements, I think we can accomplish without too much of a financial burden to the city.
And you said something that you were going to seek a conceptual design grant funding?
We've already submitted a grant to the National Park Service already. The initial grant that we've been working off of was granted to OS3. They actually brought National Park Service into the game to start with. So they've helped us tremendously just to get to this point. And that individual will also help carry our grant through for additional assistance to kind of close out this project. So
I just thought you might have said maybe a couple of $1,000 just in case you needed something to match or something like that.
I'll take a couple of extra $1,000 if you want to give it to me.
Very good, Marcelo. It's a very good project, and I think it'll add a lot, especially in economic development, the people that this organization will bring down to our community. And I really like the little kids, that little trail for the kids on the wooden planks that they had there. I think that'll be wonderful for our community. So, good job. Keep us informed.
And you'll see that the following two presentations are going to tie into this. You'll see the next presentation is kind of also taking advantage or capital or addressing one of the strategic initiatives to expand our recreational opportunities. You're going to see that OS3 is bringing something to our community. then you'll see in the very end how this piece fits into the overall master plan for pedestrian and biking trails as well.
And
So
it falls right in line with
also, it's always
our strategic plan also though too.
correct.
The only other question along those lines is, I remember when we first started with OS3, and I broke kind of contact between an engineer, Victor Fontes, was in my office, and then it passed on to Dr. Felix while he was in my office. But we had I think from OSD, a concept that there he is. We wanted to get one of those pump tracks in there. Are we still on target for that?
Yes.
Okay, that would be part of the discussion coming up. Okay, good, because I think it'll fit in perfect. You know, that high energy of the kids, while other age groups are using the trails, those kids need a place where they can go and just live up and enjoy themselves in something like one of those pump tracks courses. And I don't know if the doctor brought the other part in where we might be looking at a satellite substation from the police department out there in that area, because it's very needed, and that would be a great place to have it, where it would bring more security and also at the same time provide the services that area has for that security, and it would be a great visible point to have an office out there. And it's also, it helps the officers sometimes from, instead of coming all the way to the department here, to have a substation somewhere where they can stop and you know, for whatever purposes their official duties are involved, kind of have just a checkpoint where they can stop and you know, do their thing, I guess I should say, yeah. But is that part of the plan also?
Mayor, Council, yes, it's part of the, maybe the second year transition.
That's further down the road, right? Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it's noted that somewhere down the line it's there. Okay, well, that's the only questions I have. Is there anybody else that would, yes, Councilman?
Just a comment, Mr. Chair. The other thing I was commenting about, maybe looking into water. You know, I know you saw the water sources and all, but you'll need, you know, drinking water and stuff like that for the picnic areas. Would you be looking into restrooms and all that?
The only infrastructure we have there is a gas line that runs right through the perimeter of the property. So we're trying to minimize our costs up front so that this doesn't pretty much kill the project. I think there's a lot that we can do initially based on what I explained the initial element priorities are. But yes, as we look into future enhancements and if we're going to go down that road, then yes, then we would have to talk about funding options and so forth and so on. So
I don't know if there's a requirement for parks to have you know, water, restrooms, and stuff like that.
Mayor, Councilman, no, that's part of the second phase initiative, because once we see the demand, it's going to require that we do something along those lines. So we have it in mind, and we've applied for some grants for some of the amenities, and we intend to continue to have volunteer services, but we also are going to have to, as demand increases, provide some of the services that you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great idea.
Any other questions? Yes, Councilman Baron.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bachelier, that grant that we got on the amphitheater, that still seems, we haven't done anything, would it fit out over there?
I don't know.
Well, just something to look at so we don't lose that money from the, I think it was from the Tohono O'odham, yeah. So we don't lose that money.
Councilman Barona, we're in fact, we just have contacted with a landscape architect grad student at the U of A to start working on the amphitheater project. So we really can't and we applied for the amphitheater, so really can't move money around.
So it's-
But we will pursue the Plaska tribe as well for some amenities out there. So there's grant opportunities. We just need to see the demand, number one. Number two, begin to plan for the grant solicitation process too. So the city doesn't have to put in a lot of money into it. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman, anybody else, Council? Yes, Councilman Rojas. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Felix, maybe we should have on a monthly basis an update on some of these projects. As Councilman Barona just stated, if we don't know sometimes what's going on with certain projects, but if we would have an update, we would know what's going on, basically. So if you could provide that for us.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else in the council? Seeing no other questions, we'll continue with the presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcel.
Great presentation. Yes, the next presentation.
Mr. Mayor, while he's getting ready,
Yes, go ahead, Councilman.
I was thinking we could also probably look at CDBG funds for that, because I think that area would qualify for CDBG funding.
That's like a good idea.
Good idea.
Councilman Lucero. Sorry.
I like it, man.
Good evening, City Council members and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Liam Munoz, and I'm here to talk about Ciclovio Nogales and Monte Carlo Trails and Park concept. So as I said, before, I'm Liam Munoz, and I'm 14 years old. I will be attending Nogales High School next August, and I'm an active member of the Cero Stress movement and the Cero Stress Reptilians Youth. In this picture I have here, I have me and my dad and my sister, and we are attending our second tour to Tucson, and which was 28 miles. Behind us there are over 20 youth members from Nogales participating. So, I'll start by asking the question, how do we want to live?
Healthy.
Okay, or better off, how do we want our community to live?
Active, healthy.
Exercise.
Productive.
So, we took a survey, and our most popular answers were safer, healthier, and happier. In this picture I have here, this girl is me a few years ago.
You look happy.
Yes. Before I started riding my bike, I had very low self-esteem. I was doing very bad in school, and I was a little overweight. So, let's talk about public health crisis. In a city of 10,000 and a city of 1 million, public health crisis is the same. This is why it's important to do physical activity. In our case, walking and biking. The picture that we have here is Matias Hernandez, who is 3 years old and is a bike enthusiast. His mom was pregnant when she was riding her bike, so he was practically born on a bike. And the sooner we teach our younger generation these good habits, they will have them in their daily life. But in order to do this, it has to be safe and enjoyable. In the picture we have here, it's the Share the Roadsides in Morley Avenue. And since we put these, since the city put these since the city put these share the road signs, there's been an increase of cyclists. Imagine if we had more of this in other streets of our city. Now let's talk about parks and public spaces. I will talk about more about public spaces because Juan Guerra will be talking about the parks, the Monte Carlo Parks and Shell concept. But before I do that, I'll play a short 3-minute video of the Monte Carlo Parks and Shell system. But before I do that, imagine you're riding your bike. Imagine you're the person riding the bike and having the fun. Hope you enjoy. So I'm getting back to the. So I'll be getting back to this slide, and I'm gonna talk about a little bit about public spaces. Oh, but before I do that, did you guys enjoy the ride?
Yes. I got dizzy. Thought I was gonna wipe out. I was afraid you're gonna wipe out.
So in the picture we have in the bottom left corner, we have It's the second bicycle-friendly station in downtown Nogales, Arizona, located in the parking lot of the NCD offices. And in the other picture we have, it's the FNR ride, which is the Friday night ride. It was the graduation of the summer bike camp program of the 2017. This week we are having the 2018 summer bike program with more than 40 kids. So now, let me talk about Ciclovia Nogales. The term Ciclovia may be new to your vocabulary, but have you ever dreamed of biking, running, or strolling through the streets as your own pedestrian? Through FAIR, you are already similar with the concept. So, Ciclovia Nogales, Nogales' first Ciclovia, will transform Morley Avenue in the front of Caram Park in a car-free parkway for everyone to enjoy. Hosted by Ceros Tres, the City of Nogales, and collaborators, the event will take place every second Sunday of the month from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Our intentions are not only to help people be active in the streets, but also to give them a different perspective of our streets as part of a healthy city. I'll show you a couple pictures from Tucson Ciclovia. It's not just about bikes. It's about the people expressing themselves and going outside and enjoying their city. So in this picture, we have a man riding his bike, and we have a man in the back of a bike playing the drums. Imagine this in Morley Avenue. Imagine this man strolling down the street. Wouldn't that bring a smile to your face? Participants can enjoy a variety of fun, healthy activities along with street closure route, including yoga, Zumba demonstratives, and face painting, and healthy food. In this picture, we have a local artist of Tucson, and yes, that's a bike, and artwork. That's Tucson. That's downtown Tucson, as you have never seen it before. In the city of if the city of Tucson can do this, we can too. And that's not Tucson. It's the Ceros Tres has been doing similar events since 3 years ago, with lots of participation from the community. We're not just copy and pasting Tucson. This event we are adapting it to our own city and its people. So, I'm going to ask you this question. What is a good city?
Healthy city.
Active.
Safe, healthy.
Kids like you.
Well, what I think is a good city is to sleep at home and live outside. And we aren't on our own. We have many organizations from local, state, and worldwide helping us out, and more to come. So, do any of you guys have questions?
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead, Council. Vice Mayor, go ahead.
The other day I was on my way over to Desert Sky to drop off my little girl, and I was on Hohokam, and I think it was your group that was going along, maybe about 15, 20 riders, maybe more. And there was a little accident, a spill somewhere near the bridge. I think two of the bicycles collided. I was wondering if it was your group and if anybody got hurt seriously. Did you answer that?
Your Honor, Councilman Amador Vasquez with Ceros Tres. Yes, it was our group. What happened that day, since the group that day was really big.
It was big.
Yes,
yeah.
One of the guys decided to look back, and as he looked back, there was another bike right next to him, and actually caused a collision.
Well, they collided.
They collided between them because one of them looked back, and as you look to the side, you tend to move your handlebars towards the side you're looking at. So he looked to the left, and there was another bike too close to him, so they ended up colliding. And but they're fine. It was a minor collision between them.
Okay, I'm glad the rider is okay, and of course, by going through the trail here, it would be a lot softer if they collided out in the dirt as opposed to the pavement.
Yes,
well, I'm glad that he's all right, and the group looked great, and you're right. It would be an excellent thing for the city. I know that my bike and my little girl and my wife and I, we go on a bike ride every once in a while when the sun goes down, of course. But if we have, of course, a trail like that, it'd be excellent for us. But anyway, I think this is a great venture for you and for the city and for all of us. So I hope it really takes off. You've got definitely the support of this council, and I'm sure the mayor, of course. Thank you.
Councilman Settle, you have a...
Yes, Mayor. I just wanted to commend the presenter on your PowerPoint presentation, and your video was excellent. It seems like since you're going to Nogales High School, you've got your senior project almost done. So great job.
Anybody else from the council?
I'd just like to congratulate on this project. It's an awesome project, and we should stand behind it 1,000%. It's something good for the city and good for the residents. So it's an excellent project, and we should help in any way we can.
Yeah, I want to thank you. I thought maybe Dr. Felix had hired you because we covered some of these things on our last retreat. What we need for a progressive and healthy city, and it seems like you guys came up with the answers. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Great job.
I got one question. On those signs that collaborated with the city to share the street, what other streets are you thinking about? Have you mentioned it to the city manager, so we could work on and see what can be done?
My name is Edgardo Munoz, and yes, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting here with the ATA, and they're making a big the master plan. They're doing a big study about which roads should be appropriate to. So it's coming along.
So okay, just wanted to know in case you needed some help with it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And that signage is for the city. Are we going to be working in conjunction with ADOT and the county? Because I know the county also has some interest in that. Are we all going to be working together?
Well, the signage, there's already like 6 signs in Morley through the whole Morley Avenue to 82, right there with it ends Morley Avenue. So the signs are already there, and they're working.
No, but I was wondering, are you extending your bike trails further out into the surrounding areas of the city, or you have certain bicycle paths aside from the one here that we're doing, where the city can make it safer as you all go on your bike trips?
Yes, we're a very active group, and there's a very active community already in Nogales. There's a minority already, and we have plenty of places that this type of signage can.
But do you have a contact person? Do we have a contact person with the city that's kind of so that you can let us know what trails or what paths you're taking, so that we can take a look at it? Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, we'll go with the. Or are you done with the presentation?
I'll just say thank you, City Council members, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this presentation.
Very
job.
Thank you.
evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. After these two amazing presentations, I'm embarrassed now. So very good presentation. Thank you. This is somehow is tied with the other two projects. This is something that we have been working through the last years, we can say, because we obtained few grants that we applied a few years ago, but we are realizing the grants until now. I will start my presentation. So the pictures that you see in the left side is I extracted from our general plan. This is a conceptual plan on Grand Avenue. This is something that was requested by the community in 2010 when the general plan was adopted. It's an schematic design, but as you can see, the train on the right side, this is looking north. And then between the edge of the Grand Avenue and Union Pacific, there is plenty of room to do something like this. Obviously, Union Pacific has requested before if there is something like this needs to be a fence in between the pedestrian and the Union Pacific. But that is something coming in the future. We already have a grant for the construction in 2019. And we will have to have public meetings and meetings with Union Pacific, ADA, and it's a total different design, but we'll be talking about this in the future. So this is the overall projects that we have in our community going on. As you know, the master plan is taking place now, and we'll be working until early next year. We'll have a couple of public meetings, and then the consultant working for ADA and us is offered another public meeting in front of for Mayor and Council in July to just give us an update of the existing conditions, what they have found so far, and that is still on the table. I guess it's a good opportunity for you to become aware of what is going on. That one was a grant from ADA, and then the next one is just another grant recently awarded to the city from the Arizona State Parks. This was a competitive grant. It's just for maintenance. It's not a lot of money, but enough for hiring a consultant that they already have on call list, and they know what they need to do, and go and clean another open space that we have behind Webster Avenue, behind Camp Little Park, at the top of the hill. There are already existing trails there. You will see pictures in the next slides, but are not very well maintained. So the purpose of this grant is to improve them and have maybe other amenities there. So the next one is what I was showing in the front picture. It's another grant from this is from CMAQ. It's congestion mitigation air quality grant, and this cost was done a few years ago when we submitted the application, and was technically just a pedestrian pathway, 10 feet wide. Just considering, if ADA allows that area to construct this facility. I will show you the project limits in the next slides. The next one was a project done last year with city funds. We hired a consultant to prepare a design concept report from the border to Calle Sonora, that potentially this conceptual design, we can extend it up to the new concept in Monte Carlo. And the next one is the one that Marcel was talking about. That's the Monte Carlo Trails design. So this slide represents the timeline for the bicycle and pedestrian master plan. We are in June. Again, the consultant offered us another meeting for Mayor and Council in July, and then we also have another team meeting just to go over the findings in the first public meeting. by the way, it was a very excellent meeting, and thanks to the Zero Stress group, this room was packed, and a lot of participation. The consultant was very happy with the response. They stated that they have not seen this kind of participation in other cities. So we have a lot of input from them, and then we'll continue getting more inputs. This is the grant for the maintenance of the Western Avenue Trail Parks. This is the list of projects that were awarded statewide. Nogales is there. This is just for maintenance. There are other type of funding, but we were not awarded those grants. We'll try future cycles. This is the concept done in 2006, I guess, and then Marcel Bachelier, the Parks and Recreation Director, was in charge of this project. They obtained a grant at that time from the, I guess,
CDBG Trust for Public Land.
yeah. So there were a couple of studies done at that time. Where one of them was a conceptual design, which is basically, you will see in the next slides what existed now, what is existing now. But this is the main thing. The idea was to have few station areas and connection with other neighborhoods around the area. In this picture, you cannot see the Camp Little Park yet. So the Camp Little Park came in 2008. This is the area. It's another 15 acres land owned by the city. It's just behind the Camp Little Park. The pictures that you see there are current pictures. There are already trails there, but requires maintenance and then more signage. Then this project is the one that we applied with for CMAQ funds, and this is the corridor that we are talking about from Buffer, north of Buffer up to Country Club, and then a lateral in Franklin Road up to the high school. You know, at this point, as you can think that there is not enough room, but something can be accommodated. Obviously, it might be that the width of the trail will vary from point to point, but it can be easily accommodated. And the worst case scenario, there could be certain areas that can be, with signage and everything, share the road. Again, the picture below is extracted from the general plan, and then the picture on the top is current conditions. As you can see, there is plenty of room there. Obviously, we'll have to convince ADA to accommodate something like that there. We also have the other option on the other side of the road where all the businesses are, but it's more congested with so many driveways and utilities. So this is clear route, but we have to convince also Union Pacific. This is the design concept report done from the border to Calle Sonora, and technically what this conceptual design did was checking the cross-section available, see what can be done at Morley Avenue and Banker and Hohokam to improve safety for the drivers and pedestrians and bicyclists. So it's taking a look in every kind of signage needed, if there is plenty of room to accommodate a bike lane or not. If not, we have options. I will show a few slides in the next slide. You can see the limits of this project, but again, this can be easily extended up to the conceptual design in Monte Carlo on Calle Sonora. On the right side is part of the slides, the recommended options from the consultant in places where there is no room. We can have chair lanes and parking or parking on both sides. So it's an option. There are options, and these concepts are applied in other cities. So by saying the cross sections are not wide enough, so there are other ways to share the road. This is another slide where it shows the from Park Avenue on Morley Avenue. As you can see, the light blue lines represents parking, and then it's very tiny the drum in there, but the green things represents bicycling, and then the yellow vehicle. So this is another slide. Different challenge is on Banker. As you know, there is no room there, but the main point there is to install plenty of signage to share the road, and same thing on the surface. Installs certain symbols that represents bikes, and obviously this will have to be together with a strong campaign, educational campaign to educate the drivers and bicyclists. That's it. If you have any questions.
Yes, any questions from Councilman Lucero?
Thank you, Mayor. One on looking at your costs for the different bike pathways, the Grand Avenue one really stuck out as probably a deal breaker, and you're looking at $750,000 to do something like that. The other ones, I think we could probably do in-house and probably can move on those a lot quicker, especially because they all appear to be our roads as opposed to ADOT roads. So the $750,000 projected cost, you said that was just for pedestrian, right? Or when it was first?
It's a multi-use path, pedestrian and bicycle.
So is that all grant funding, or is that?
It's grant funding.
It's
grant funding. It's from Federal Highway Administration, but managed by, administrated by ADA.
Okay, so we'd still have to apply and just hope that we get it?
We already applied. We were awarded the grant, but will not. This kind of funding is programmed in 5 years, and then we don't have our turn is in 2019.
So we applied for 750,000, what you're saying, and we got?
Yeah, we got it.
We got
it.
Wow, great.
So we have to wait next year to start the design and start working with ADAT and Union Pacific.
Yeah.
They might share costs as well, make the project bigger. This is just something obtained. The city has the right to request congestion mitigation and quality funds. These are money just for the county, the city. Whatever there are not let's say when there is a lot of dust, and we, as you know, we receive a lot of dust from Nogales, Sonora. We are downstream, and we were lucky to be selected or designated as non-attainment area by EPA. So in the federal government, in order to help cities like Nogales, they provide funding for this type of projects to improve health.
I think you're right. Probably the biggest part would be the public awareness campaign, just to let other people know that there are bikers on the road, and those of you that are bikers here probably know that cars don't really pay attention to bikers. And I hate to say it, but when I would bike around the downtown area, the worst drivers were city drivers. Our own city people would almost run me over half the time, more than anybody else. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was that, Councilman, because of speed?
Me going too fast, or
no, them going too fast?
It was just them not paying attention. They just didn't see me.
Councilman Barona?
Thank you, Mayor. Juan, I attended your last summer meeting here, and the participation was tremendous, but I know a lot of it had to do with the bicyclists here, because they made sure that there was a lot of input there, and I really liked how you could go around to the different maps and the different concepts and put your little dots on what's important to you, what roadways are important, and there they can get the information to bring back that report that they want to bring to us here. So I like the public participation that was going on, that kind of a partnership, the partnership that you're doing with the grants. It looks very good, and I think it's a big plus for our community. But I really like the bicyclist combination and working in partnership with the city of Nogales and all the administrators working together in a positive fashion on this. It looks very good, and I hope you continue working together as a team on that. And Mr. Kissinger, thank you for showing me around that, because I had no idea what was going on at all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Maldonado.
One, on that picture where you showed the the live, basically where on Grand Avenue and the train was, that area is a very heavily flooded overflow area right there by where the exit of the Baffert Ranch is and stuff like that. So when you talk to the railroad and all that, make sure all that is taken into consideration. And the other thing is being that you guys, it's all a bike thing, down that Monte Carlo path also is, you know, what you could see there's areas also where on rain days you might have issues or stuff like that, hazards to, you know, just like driving in a dip, you know, don't drive when it's it rains, and you know, you guys got to take all that into consideration.
That is true. We are at the time when we were at the time of the design, we will see all those aspects, and then to be sure that drivers are safe, and then and ADA is aware that there are drainage deficiencies there, so they need to see what else they can do to improve that.
Yeah, but especially that area, if you're going to do a bike path, you know, you might have to secure it very well, because when it overflows there.
Yeah, that's true. And then in Monte Carlo, so part of the ideas is to warn the users of, hey, when flooding, no, don't be here, so something like that. And then also there is like a liability clause that the city is thinking to put in front of the users.
Yes, Councilman.
I think to follow up on Councilman Maldonado's recommendations, I think for us to truly appreciate what needs to be done, we all need to start biking these routes as a mayor and council, so we can see what it is that the public wants. So I think the more that we participate, the better.
Will the city provide those bikes?
We're going to have 6 vacancies.
We need training wheels on those things.
It's not as easy as what, all you have to do is go to that committee meeting that you haven't put get your input right there.
Police department is giving up 6 seats.
Mr. Mayor, just one question here. One, you mentioned at the time that you were not aware of some of the grants that were probably available. Do you have a better awareness of that at this point, of grants out there?
Well, talking about grants is a totally different subject. There are grants of any kind, even with private sector, and we have done the best that we can, and so far we have obtained few grants. But I'm very honest with you that I'm not aware of maybe other grants available. So it's not my field of expertise, but I do what I can.
Who would be the expert on that field?
Well, other cities have grant writers and a whole staff dedicated just for hunting grants. Requires a lot of effort because you have to prepare exhibits, estimation costs, and continue applying for grants. If you see the calendar, you will see that there are opportunities everywhere, but are very competitive grants. And
Thank you, Juan. Dr. Felix has experience on that. Would that be correct, man?
I believe so.
I know he's busy there.
We'll have him right now.
We had a position already. That's Dr. Felix. Don't we have a position that you said that was going to be economic development / grants writer?
Yes.
Is that person on board?
No, not yet.
Oh, you haven't. Okay.
But I have a lot of grant experience.
Yes, you do. Is that correct, Doc?
Right. I'm just, as we get projects, I'm directing them to the different opportunities that exist around the country, and we just need to pursue them more aggressively. But we need the documentation, we need the cost, we need the validation of the need and the demand, so that this is an excellent opportunity with OS3, working with them to obtain some grants and then continue on with what Juan's proposing. So.
Thank you, Doc.
I just want to thank Dr. Felix, and you can continue. Go ahead. During that time when he was in my office, and I remember I did mention we were talking about not having economic development director, and I said we could save some money because out of my office, Dr. Felix handled quite a few of those grants, helping city staff write them up, and ever since then he's been active. Now more so that he's city manager. So even when he was making a low salary there in my office, helping save the city money. He was busy wearing different hats, and now, rightfully so, he continues. He was on top of those projects, and that's why I'm so thankful for everyone from my staff, from Mr. Bachiller, Juan Guerra, especially OS3 that brought this idea to our attention, and they've been so patient working with us that I want to thank you for everything you've done. But yet, it's always been progress heading in the right direction. It's taken some time, but it's great because you guys wanted to do it right and incorporated all these ideas, and with the help of city staff and everyone, it seems like we're going to have a dream come true within our time, within our time period of seeing that vision that went out, and now it's starting to become a reality. I want to thank everybody so much for that. But go ahead, Councilman Barona.
Thank you, Mayor. Backing up on Vice Mayor Rojas' comments and your response to his comments, Dr. Felix, the position of economic development / grants writer, okay? That's a full-time job.
Yes, it is.
I understand what the mayor is saying and everything of your expertise, not to dilute your expertise on that. But you're the city manager, and there are a lot of concerns, and the list is long, that you need to address on a daily basis. So please fill that position so we have somebody available that can devote themselves to this one concern that we have. Because you have a lot on your plate, Dr. Felix. I'm not trying to dilute it again, but fill that position so we have somebody full-time on board to take care of economic development, which is another full-time job, and the grants writer.
And that's because you've done enough, Doctor. You've bridged things, and I think Councilman Barona is right on that. You need to apply yourself to the other tasks at hand, and we need somebody to help you out in that position.
Well, Mayor and Council,
thank you, Councilman Barona.
If I may, we need to develop the program needs and requirements that we have, and then identify what grants to pursue. So we need documentation, and the integrative approach that these employees have worked on allows for them to really develop an action plan, and then you identify where you're going to go for the grants. Grant writers, good grant writers, are hard to find, and so we really are looking at now perhaps hiring consultants on a specific grant basis. Folks at the U of A that are excellent writers, and so that we can have the documentation, have them augmented into a grant requirement format, and submit them. So my job really is to document the needs, costs, and the purpose, and then find someone to write the grants, and I could train someone, which is what I'm looking at. Because they're so competitive in terms of hiring good grant writers. But you don't want to put the horse before the cart. So you have to have the projects in hand, and so we'll get there.
Councilman Barona.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to take a little sidestep, Mr. Parra's permission, off of the agenda, just a little. But maybe you can do something, coordination, and bring back to the council here, revive this thing, and maybe we can attract somebody with a higher salary and working together with Santa Cruz County on it, so we can find one person that can do this, so all of these enthusiasm that we have here isn't dwindled and we get somebody on board.
It goes, Councilman Barona, it goes in line with what we need for the city, but also expanding these opportunities into the county as well.
Right.
So it needs to be a collaborative effort.
Working together,
And
possibly.
we're directed in it.
Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Barona. Anyone else? Seeing none, do you have something else to add to?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you so much, Secretary. Okay. Again, thank you all so much for your participation, input, and really zero stress. You've came up with that vision of kind of putting Nogales on the map as a futuristic, safe, happy city that's, you know, and it's not that expensive, especially when you kind of put it in place one step at a time. It seems like, you know, we're finding the time to get the funding, get the planning, and working together. I think we're going to achieve that dream into making it a reality. Thank you so much. Going next to number 4, we have the fiscal year 18-19 budget presentation by Finance. Yes. Los agarramos en especial, ¿no? Sí.
Para ahorrarle la ciudad.
Get the red front for
I hope I do. I don't know. Maybe it's still in your life. Should we just start it at the
You may not have enough.
We're all the same. There you go. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Janet Barrales, the Finance Director, and this is just a brief overview of kind of retouching the budget from when we last met in April to discuss the proposed budget for fiscal year 18-19. There hasn't been many changes from when we last visited the budget, and again, just a brief overview of why we have a budget, the purpose to provide the best possible service to all citizens, and this is done by effectively managing the monies the city collects to efficiently cover the cost of the core services provided to the community. And then just a brief overview of the revenues. Not much has changed since, again, when we last met. We anticipate that our operating budget will be $41 million. This is broken out by our general fund, which is the fund that collects city sales tax, franchise fees, our state shared taxes, and other miscellaneous ambulance, public utility. And then we have our HERF, which is state funded and is used to repair or maintain our streets, as well as the lights. Then we have sewer, water, and sanitation, which is our utilities, and then finally the housing. As we look at our expenditures for the year, you can see that our personnel, our payroll, is roughly $20 million. We have professional services at 2.5. We have contractual at 4.7. Our supplies 1.3. Other operating, which is mainly money that we set aside in case we have any recovery from the insurances. We put that in there. We have our debt service, which is at 2.8. Interfund transfers at 1.3. Our capital outlay at 2.1. And then fund balance is our contingency that we budget in case of any emergency or capital projects that we might need to address that we did not anticipate at the time the budget was prepared. So briefly, the changes from the budget that was presented in April. We did increase general fund contingency by $1 million. We're not sure yet how much money we'll need to get the Chase building up and running. So at this point, this is how much we anticipate we're using from our contingency, but it's not nothing set in stone. And then also water and sanitation to help meet their capital needs. We increased the budget by $148,000, and this is also to address the WIFA debt that we now have. The $2 million that WIFA lent the city has now been fully drawn down, so we are obligated to pay that back now at the full amount. And then sanitation, the capital that they requested, the 2 trucks. So that's an additional 1.3 that we increased the budget from last time. And in addition, this was not addressed at the April meeting, but just so you're aware, there are some departments that receive additional funding to help meet their operational needs. Court has some state money they receive, as well as some fees, or as part of their fines. City attorney has a victims' rights grant that helps cover one of the individuals in the department. Library has E-rate and a SIGIA fund that helps pay for the part-time employees out in the satellite libraries. And then police, mainly the Stone Garden grant, as well as GOHS, and some seizure money, potential seizure money they might receive. Fire, the wildland fires, and I think some GOHS grants also that they anticipate. And then parks is the Hona Ona money. We went ahead and put that in there. So that's another $3.2 million in potential funding. So the final result, the budget is balanced. And kind of what's the next steps for the budget. After the tentative budget is presented at the regular council meeting, if there are any final changes, recommendations, or adjustments that any of you might have, we will implement those. And then we would have a meeting on June 27th to approve the final budget. And really that's just, again, it's just a quick update overview.
Yes, go ahead.
Mayor, if I may, I have talked to Finance about augmenting the budget by $50,000 to complete a comprehensive salary evaluation analysis of the salary schedule as it is now. It is out of kilter, and rather than have make decisions on a one-on-one basis, I think the entire pay system needs to be evaluated.
Is that any questions on that? Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Mayor. Dr. Felix, I appreciate that. It was one of the issues I raised during the budget process, rather than looking at a piecemeal approach to addressing salary increases, that we look at the entire organization and where positions require adjustments in salary, that we address it at least in the study, and then we can figure out what the impact is going to be overall, and then we can budget for it hopefully in the future. On the changes that you're making here, is there an actual increase in the budget from what you presented last time, or is this just monies that are being moved around from line item to line item based on?
There were some monies that were moved around within the line items for the different departments. One of them that I know that we had to adjust was the workers' comp. Even though there was no an increase this year, we did realize that the rates that we had were not the correct ones. So we went ahead and adjusted those amounts. And basically that was it. Just a few little items that came up that the departments asked for after we met. But the overall operating that was presented for general fund from last time, the only increase was $1 million for contingency.
Okay, so there was a lot of items that were touched on in the capital expenditure side that I don't think we ever came to a decision on, or have those items been addressed, or?
Yes. So for this year's budget, the capital items that were budgeted for was a vehicle for library.
Is that on some page that we can look at?
It was in your council
Okay.
packet.
All right, let's go through it then.
Wait a minute, what council packet? I have
In
it.
your agenda for your tentative budget. It should be
It was in
in
It
the
wasn't
last.
in there,
in
because I went through the whole thing.
So the book that you have, the notebook,
Yes.
it should be towards the end.
This
Okay.
No, the white one. Yeah.
The one that just passed out.
is on there, what you did was there just.
I think
The
the second
resolution.
to the last page
Yeah, I
should
see
have it.
that.
Okay.
Perfect. Page 87.
Page
Yeah.
80.
Okay.
So the vehicle for library, 5 vehicles for police, and then we anticipated, I think 10 tough books. The brush truck for fire, the light rescue truck. It says Techea Park, but I think that it should have said Ron Turley, not Techea. And then Caron Park, just finishing up that archway that's going to be installed there. Perf, the aero board and the message board. SOAR, the flow meters, lift station, a dump truck, an equipment trailer, water, the interconnection from the water tank to Camino de la Paloma, then cleanup and recoding 2 water tanks, replacing water valves and replacing 2 booster pumps. Sanitation, this says 2, I'm sorry, this says 1 sanitation truck, but we did budget for 2, but that is with if we go out for a loan, or maybe general fund lending money to sanitation. And then some containers, and then the 2 car lifts and the forklift.
Okay. So can you explain process now in terms of where we're having this? Is this the tentative budget adoption, and then?
So the tentative budget adoption is in the regular scheduled council meeting too.
And then final will be when?
June 27th.
Okay. That's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, Councilman Barona.
Thank you, Mayor. Here again on this chip seal, fog seal, the following streets. I thought we were gonna be able to do more than these streets, and a lot of these streets on there are a duplicate, I thought, of what we've already done.
Right, so that's a department highlight. That's what was accomplished this year. We decided to put in some of the departments highlights of what was accomplished this fiscal year. It's that's not.
I thought you were doing this again.
No. Those are department highlights. Some of the departments provided things that were accomplished this fiscal year, just to give more credibility to them.
Okay. And how many police officers do we have right now?
I think there's is there like 48 maybe?
Right now we have 51, Mr. Barona. So we're about at 55, so we're still working at that number. Hopefully, in the next 6 months to a year, we're back up to 55. So the process is just it's a long process. The background and everything is done before we hire these officers.
Mr. Mayor, for the record, can you come up to the podium, because when people watch this thing, they can't see who's talking from the back, and then.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
Mr. Barona, Roy Bermudez, Chief of Police. We're up to 51 officers right now. Actually, we have 4 openings left, and we should hopefully have these openings or these positions in place here within the next 6 months to a year. It's a long process. It's a long hiring process, actually, with medicals and backgrounds and applications. One of the things we're looking at right now is we're openly recruiting for certified officers, lateral officers. As of October of 2018, the academy that we attend for recruits is looking at increasing or start charging per officer between $15,000 and $25,000 to train each individual officer. So my priority right now is to go out there and recruit certified officers. That way we put minimal training on them. A month and a half later, they're boots on the ground. Versus a recruit off the street, it probably takes us at least about a year. And it's going to start costing us about $25,000 just for the academy itself. So times that by 4 positions, 4 recruits, that's going to equal to about $100,000 per year to get up to the 55. So as of right now, we're hoping that we continue to hire laterals that are recertified, and all we provide is the equipment that they need and the training for about a month and a half, and they're boots on the ground, they're ready to go. So the long answer to your short question is we're 51 out of 55 right now, sir.
And in the year 2000, when the residents of this community approved a 1/4 cent sales tax for public safety, there was a benchmark there that the city could not go below the employment of those officers. In the year 2000, how many officers did you have?
Memory serves me correctly, I believe we had 65.
Okay. May I address the city manager, Mayor?
Please do, Council.
Dr. Felix, the people of this community went about to tax ourselves a 1/4 cent sales tax that in the period of 18 years has brought in millions and millions of dollars. But one of the conditions of that self-imposed tax that we did is that there would be a benchmark so to make sure that the money wasn't used for other purposes, to take away money from public safety, give it to other departments, and then get the sales tax to go ahead and supplant what was taken out from there. So during all of this time, and the reason I address you, Dr. Felix, is because I fault our city managers who did this. And what they did is they reduced our police force by 10 police officers. And that should have never been done. We should have right now, during this 18 years, 65 police officers. At the minimum, we should have 65 police officers. So if last year, if he's catching up right now, we even dipped to below 50 police officers. And that's something that here again, the people themselves said, we want a city manager form of government. Look what happened. We're short police officers, and yet at the same time, we're taxing ourselves more money so that this wouldn't happen, that we would have more police officers, more firemen, better equipment. And it's not there. I don't see it there. Something maybe in the future that you could address, or so you don't need to address it right now, Dr. Felix, but this thing needs to be addressed. We can't continue because as far as I'm concerned, we've misled the public of what we were going to do with the money.
Mayor, Councilman Barona, the chief and I have talked about a plan of action to get back to that level.
Go ahead if you want to interject.
Okay, Councilman Lucero.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dr. Barona. I concur. I think but the fault is the mayor and council, because we are the ones that approve the budget that's presented to us, and that's one of the things that's bothered me over at least the last 4 years that I've been here is the haphazard approach to the budget process. This time around, we had more involvement in the budget process, but in the previous year, we had no involvement. It was just presented to us, and we still have questions. For example, I would like, before we do the final budget adoption, that we have a thorough presentation on the streets that are going to be addressed, just so we in the public know what kind of roads are going to be addressed, in what fashion they're going to be taken care of. An update, for example, on the water utilities, what's going on with the water meter replacement and the valves and so on, just so we have a better idea of not only we, but the general public knows what's going on with the budget that we're going to be adopting. But I concur with Dr. Barona. We're not doing what we were elected to do, and the fault is ours. So if we don't step up and start making staff accountable, then it falls back to us. So we need to do a better job. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And go ahead, Councilman Medina.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you for your patience. And the other thing, just in springboarding off of Councilman Lucero's comment, Dr. Felix, is that I like to come, and I'm sure all 7 of us like to come into this meeting well prepared. I can't do it if you give me the agenda on Tuesday and the meeting is on Wednesday. I can't. And I can't get these booklets handed out to me here at the meeting. They have to be given to us 2 or 3 days. You know, we have other things. We said we were committed to this, but we all have other things. We need time to study. Please give us the time to study. If we need to develop a policy when we get this, when the cutoffs are, but I can't do it like this. I just can't. And I don't think anybody else here can. We all need time. We all have other commitments, so too. What about the bicycle patrol? Whatever happened to the bicycle?
That went away with the cutting of the 10 officers. We cut down our bicycle patrol. We cut our mortar unit in half. We did away with 1 SR officer, and that all entails in those 10 officers that we lost over the last 8 to 10 years.
Okay. Is there anything else as part of equipment or anything that we need to be aware of?
Oh, and we also lost 1 detective. So all the bike patrol, the members of the motor unit, the 1 dare officer, and the 1 detective, this is for the collateral damage of the cutting of 10 officers.
Well, I'll leave that for you to respond to. Is there anything else that you need to bring to our attention that?
One of the things, and I've been, in all fairness, I've been collaborating, all fairness to Dr. Felix, we've been communicating a lot. We've been collaborating and aggressively looking for solutions to, number 1, come up to the 55 allotted officers that we are right now, and number 2, find ways of increasing our officers back to 65, which was, like you said, back in 2000. One of the plans of action that we talked about is increasing 2 officers per year in our budget for the next 10 years, which would be the equivalent of the 10 officers that we lost.
All righty. Mayor, with your permission, may I ask the fire chief a question?
Okay, go ahead. Fire Chief, would you please come up?
When you went over your strategic plan with us and everything, you told us you needed that big fire truck, and I see now that Dr. Felix is recommending two trucks that seem to be smaller and all of that. Is that, when is the big fire truck going to come into place?
Yes, correct. What the capital budget looks like for this year are the 2 smaller, more support vehicles. After talking with Finance and Dr. Felix, I know there was some talk about possibly a large lease purchase in the coming years, in the next few years, where maybe that would include the actual pumper, the fire engines that we need to start looking at replacing as well.
And as far as equipment, I just want to make sure that the police chief and you are telling us, the council, I don't want to hear from the staff, that our officers and our firefighters have all of the equipment to stay safe during the times they are on duty.
We have several items that are all kind of coming to the end of their lifespan at once, as we've made you aware of. The self-contained breathing apparatus, the fire engines, some of the vehicle rescue tools. We're aggressively pursuing grants And we have also proposed I have proposed a 5-year plan by Dr. Felix's request. That is going to be included in your strategic planning and your retreat documents, where I've kind of looked at the next 5 years and kind of outlined some of these big ticket items that we should start looking at, and I have some suggestions on various revenue sources to kind of start looking at that. The equipment that we do have right now is operable. It is various certifications and those types of things are in place for that, but it is definitely time to start planning, which I'm glad to hear of the strategic planning processes, the efforts that you are doing as a mayor and council, as well as the city manager.
Okay, good. Now, with the permission of the mayor, the third prong of public safety, but I don't know if anybody's here. Is anybody here from the courts? Could you please tell me if everything is safe over there with security and everything like that? Everything. I just want to get, Mayor, I want to get everybody on record, because then they come back and they.
I'm sorry, I was a little unprepared. I didn't know we were going to talk about this tonight. We do have a mandated court security plan that the AOC is requiring us to be.
AOC, what is that?
I'm sorry, the Administrative Office of the Courts, the Arizona Supreme Courts. They have a security plan, and it's been over the past several years, and I mentioned in the budget, when we thought we were going to be moving to the county building, all of the proposals and things that we got for duress signals, cameras, and things like that had been for that building. So we just this week got a proposal from Preventronics, and it's in the $30,000 range, but we are looking at funding from JSEF to help cover some of that.
Okay, so you're comfortable right now with?
Well, it's something that we're going to have to do. They're mandating that we have these security measures. I mean, we've got dress buttons, but they don't work. And security cameras.
Sure your employees are also safe in the three-pronged public safety.
Thank you, sir.
So if you could please work with Dr. Friend to make sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I have more questions of people, but I'm going to go back and lean back on Councilman Lucero's. Maybe we can discuss this and give a little bit more input, especially what streets are going to be at a later time or so, Mayor. Because I know we still have a regular meeting to deal with, and I don't.
So are you giving the floor to Councilman Sutter?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And that's all I was going to suggest, is that it's getting along in the process, and we've got time before we do the final budget adoption. We can get updates on all these specific items in another meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I just have one more
Up here.
comment really quick.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, another thing that we have, and I know we talked about it probably about 6 months ago, is the acquisition of body cameras. Just to let you know, we just submitted a grant application to the Department of Justice. Actually, it was due on the last day of May for close to $100,000 for 55 body cameras. So I'm doing some lobbying with some contacts I have, and hopefully we're successful.
Great.
One of the other things that we had discussed with Dr. Felix is I'm doing some restructuring, and we're talking about, and I'm glad that he brought up the compensation study, because for years we've been kicking the road down the can down the road here, and really throwing 5% here, 3% there, and everything else. But the compensation study should hopefully take care of the issues that we've had for years and years and years. One of the things that I'm looking at, and I proposed, is I want to freeze the assistant chief's position, and in lieu of freezing that position, go back and use that as an incentive to attract certified officers by increasing pay by 3%, and that would be huge. Again, we're looking at attracting certified officers versus hiring officers off the street, which you're probably going to cost us about $25,000 a piece for just the training itself. Times that by 4, it's going to cost us about $100,000 a year. As far as to the numbers that we've done, preliminary numbers that we've done, we can provide a raise to all police personnel, 3% raise, and only impacting, I guess, going over the entire pay of the assistant chief, including EREs, by approximately $10,000. And I can find different ways in my budget to, I wouldn't say supplant because that's a bad word, but move money around to make up for those $10,000. But that's something, preliminary conversations that we've had with Dr. Felix, and so I just figured just bring it up.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Felix, yeah, I support the deal, this compensation consultant you want to get. And the other final comment, I just want to make sure that all of the employees, we've given them $500 every December. And when we had discussions here with the mayor and council, we kind of wanted to see if we could get that up to $1,000. And this budget that you're recommending, is it up to $1,000?
We're augmenting we were at 800, now we're doing 1,000.
For this next time that we talk about it.
Right. And with the, if I may, with the salary compensation analysis, I think we can, become to address some of these issues. And we'd love to have everybody get 3%. But
yeah, but you're going to have to make it. I understand the chief's point completely, but from your perspective, you've got to look at the bigger school. Right. Mayor, thank you for your patience.
Thank you. So you're going to be looking at these numbers then?
Right.
Taking consideration with the chief, because he's offering something in return for those 3% from his department, plus trying to cover where it would kind of pretty much work out.
Yes, sir. I'm working with Dr. Felix. We've been talking, and this is just for the last couple of days, so there's really nothing set as of yet. But I thought since we're talking about the issues and the needs, I just assume just bring it up right now.
Okay. Well, thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you.
I guess at this point,
I actually have one question.
Okay.
And it's actually for our fire chief back there. And Chief, the question is there a possibility of getting the light rescue truck at no cost from the county attorney's office? I believe the fire department was.
I would certainly be interested in looking at what would be available. And you sent some suggestions that we are looking at as well. Mm-hmm. The amount of equipment that's going to be on there, the gross weight of the vehicle, it will have to be, a medium duty.
And F-550.
F-550 would be one example of that. We're hoping for a 4-door cab for the transportation of personnel. That was the other item that we're really hoping to get. If we could meet the requirements for the medium duty chassis and enough utility box space for all the equipment that we want to store on that, I'd certainly be interested in looking at that.
But the question is, does the county have one? The county attorney's office? They might have one.
I am unaware what they have that's available at this point. We were looking at other sources of used vehicles, and working with fleet on that, and the maintenance supervisor and the fleet supervisor, and kind of weighing the pros and cons of different options. And I believe those have been kind of presented or discussed. So I certainly would be interested.
You might want to get a hold of the county attorney and see if they got anything in the forfeiture.
Yes.
Lot there that they have. They might have a late model vehicle that could be given to the fire department at no cost, or lent to the however it works. They lend it, and then when you're done with it, you give it back, and that would be no cost.
Okay, Councilman, thank you. I will investigate that.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. I guess so. This should do it with the budget, and we have the rest are in-house. I'd like to deviate at this point and go to number 6, presentation by Matthew Barr on lead contamination in the area of the shooting range by Mariposa Road and Target Range Road. If you could come up to the podium and just give us your name and start your presentation. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Should make it a bigger print for Marcy.
Don't give them one.
Thank you. Be able to read it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you leave one here for Mr. Hennessyne in case he shows?
So first off, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council and the public for your time. I was going to come up here and talk about the lead problem, but I think I've been spreading the word about that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let Todd Whitwer here speak about a solution to this lead problem that we have.
Hi, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and the public. My name is Todd Whitwer. I'm with a company by the name of Geotech Contracting and Remediation. Before I start my presentation, I just wanted to thank whoever set up the agenda for not having me go directly after Leah. Her presentation was so terrific, I'm sure nobody would have been listening to me after that. Anyway, the reason why Matt has asked me to give an overview of the issues, I actually have been working at the site for about 11 years. I was originally hired by the county. The county had an EPA brownfields grant, and I was hired to assess properties owned by Mr. Garcia, by the Bars, by Mr. Kiriakis, and also by Paul Arbo, who is the owner of the shooting range. So with that, I'll just go through real quickly some facts about the situation and be available to answer any questions that might exist. But the first thing to be aware of is we're really talking about two distinct areas. There is the shooting range itself. As I said, that's owned by Mr. Arbo. It's been leased by the Customs and Border Patrol for several years. They recently stopped using the range. The range, it covers about a half an acre, and they are in the process of cleaning the half-acre site up in order to fulfill the lease and then return the land back to Mr. Arbo. There are several property owners who have land that surround the shooting area or the shooting range. Mr. Garcia owns some land. Nikita Kiriakis owns some land also, and the Mariposa Properties, the Bar Trust, they also own some property, but they have recently did a land exchange with Mr. Arbo, so they aren't actually the surrounding property owners anymore. But of course, they're very interested in this issue. So to kind of start off with some information on the shooting range, the Corps of Engineers was hired by the Border Patrol to do what's called a remedial investigation feasibility study. And that's a set study that's prescribed by CERCLA, which is this National Superfund program. And what they did is they did some sampling, and then they did an evaluation of various options for cleanup of that site. And they identified the need to clean up that site because there was various compounds, most notably lead, that was present in above cleanup standards that were established by both the EPA and the Department of Environmental Quality. And so after they had identified the need, they did this feasibility study, and they identified several options that they could then, they thought would be appropriate for the cleanup of that site that would protect health, that would be cost effective, that would be implementable, and that type of thing. And so that was then, what they then did is they released what's called a decision document. And basically that decision document looked at the 3 or 4 options or the alternatives that were addressed in the RIFS, the Remedial Investigation Feasibility Study. And they came up with their preferred alternative, which was to excavate the soil from that half-acre site and then dispose of it off-site. And so what they basically did is they said any soil that contains lead in a concentration that would make it a hazardous waste would be basically excavated, put into trucks, and then transported to Beatty, Nevada, where that's the closest hazardous waste disposal site. There is no site in Arizona that can handle that. And there were some methods that they used to determine whether it's a hazardous waste, which are called the toxicity characteristic leaching procedure, and that's what that TCLP means. And I won't get into the weeds with a lot of environmental jargon. The other option, or the other thing they were going to do is, if the waste or the soil was determined to be not a hazardous waste, they were also going to excavate that and take it up to Marana and dispose of it as a hazardous waste, or a non-hazardous waste, I'm sorry. And so in doing that evaluation, they were going to remediate the shooting range such that the soil remaining in the shooting range would be below what are called residential standards, so that basically it would be unencumbered and they could do basically anything they wanted on the site. And so in the decision document, they estimated that it would cost about $3.7 million to clean up that half-acre site. As some of you are aware, there was also, they took the decision document and then they came up with what's called a remedial action plan. And that was prepared in January of 2018, and there was a public meeting back in March 6th where they presented their remedial action plan to the public for comment and feedback on their plan. And so their comment period closed, that should be March 30. I just realized that was a mistake. So the public comment period closed on March 30th. There were a number of comments that were made. In fact, I submitted some comments based upon my long history of working there. At this point, there has not been any sort of response from the Corps on those comments. And that's not unusual. It usually takes quite a while to plow through all the comments. And my understanding is they've received quite a few comments. So this last bullet point, what I wanted to bring out was that according to the Corps, is that this plan, it may not be the final solution. There may be some additional things that they may need to do, both on the shooting range, and there's definitely things that need to be done on the adjacent properties, the properties owned by Mr. Garcia and Mr. Kiriakis. So right now, where the shooting range, the status of the shooting range is that there is a program that the Department of Environmental Quality operates, and it's called the Voluntary Remediation Program. And it's a program that DEQ basically brings all the different departments together to provide a single point of contact, and then you follow certain steps, and then once you're done, they'll provide a letter saying that you have no further action required. An NFA is what it's called. The Border Patrol had enrolled the site in this program back in 2013. They were accepted a couple months later in September of 2013. The Border Patrol submitted a remedial action work plan, which is different from the RAP, the remedial action plan that I discussed earlier. It basically serves the purpose of getting the closure through the voluntary remediation program. That was submitted back in 2018. I asked Mr. Bingham with ADEQ, and to his knowledge, that has not been approved at this point. So it's still in the process. The actual plan to clean up under the BRP program is still being negotiated with DEQ. So a company by the name of, it's a joint venture, Seoul JCP, was awarded that contract to clean up the site, to implement that remedial action plan. And they will still go forward with the remedial action plan, and whatever that looks like after they've addressed the comments that they've received. So they are still moving forward with cleaning up the shooting range. And then, according to some information that Mr. Barr has received, the Border Patrol down the road at some undefined time is going to address groundwater issues which have not been addressed at all in any of the studies that have been done today. Any munitions that may be present on the adjacent properties, and then other potential contaminants and exposure routes on the adjacent properties. They also say that in the process of doing the second RIFS on the adjacent properties, if they find a need to go back and do additional work at the shooting range, they'll do that. There really is no time frame for doing that, and from our understanding, they do not have this work budgeted. So, as I said, so that covers the shooting range. So the areas outside the shooting range, as I said, I was hired by Santa Cruz County to perform the Phase 1 environmental site assessments back in 2009. And as a part of that work, what we did is we went to these different surrounding properties, and we noticed a lot of bullet fragments scattered throughout the site. And so we recommended that they do further assessment of the soil to see if there was any contamination that was on the site soils. So after that, and Alwyn Environmental, Alwyn Consultants are a company that I used to own. I sold to a company called Geotech, so that's kind of why you see those different entities up there. So we did a Phase 2 environmental site assessment that we completed in 2009 that was done through the EPA Brownfields grant. And we discovered that there was quite a bit of lead contamination spread throughout these adjacent properties. And these contaminants were present above what are called non-residential standards. So basically that means that you can't use those properties without doing some sort of remediation. We did some additional analysis after that through the Bar Trust and discover and kind of more define the amount of contamination that existed. And then a company called PICA was hired by the Corps to do basically some evaluation of our previous work and kind of confirm what we already knew. Again, there's really no plan by the Border Patrol or Corps to do any sort of cleanup on those sites. So in discussion with the property owners, they asked me to take a look at what it would cost to clean that up. Because as I said, they basically have about 8 acres of land that they can't use. And to kind of piggyback on some of the discussions further, and previously that some of the other people have talked about, that's 8 acres that is unusable. And I know they have a lot of plans to put in produce warehouses and other things that could bring in income to the county. So this is the area, and I'm sorry it's not real obvious, but if you look at the upper right square, the small square, that's the area of the shooting range. Actually, it's right below it. And then, so all of the other area encircled by the white line is the area that needs to be cleaned up. Now, that, as I said, that's about 8 acres. We actually recommend a different method be used to clean this site up. And essentially what we would do is we would excavate the soil. We would then add what's called a stabilizing agent to basically fix the lead in the soil so it can't leach out. That would render it as a non-hazardous waste. And then we could transport it to either Los Reales in Tucson or take it up to Marana. So we wouldn't be transporting hazardous waste across the state. We estimate that, and this cost estimate was put together probably about a year ago, that to remediate those 8 acres it would cost about $4.1 million. And so we would run this program through the BRP, the Voluntary Remediation Program. We would receive closure from DEQ. They would give us a letter that says there's no further action, and then that would allow the property owners to use this property for whatever use they want. As I said, they're looking to put in a produce warehouses, and as you can imagine, folks who want to store produce in warehouses don't really want to do it on contaminated land, so it's important for them to get that NFA so that they can demonstrate that this is a safe place to store the goods. We would also do the permitting. There's a wash that runs through there, so we need to get permits to get to access those sites. And then we would revegetate the site in the areas where they're not actually going to start building. So just to kind of provide a little bit of some issues that we still are outstanding, the original RAP that was done, that's been released to the public, doesn't address the VRP closure. Now again, there may be the closure through VRP that's going to be addressed through a different plan. That hasn't been released to the public, so we don't know what that looks like. So if that doesn't happen, and they follow only the RAP, we're not going to get any, there's not going to be any sort of regulatory closure for either the shooting range or the adjacent properties. As I had mentioned earlier, there's not been any consideration or any assessment of the groundwater that exists. Frankly, the depth to groundwater in this area is between 30 and 100 feet. There's what's called a perch layer, which is a narrow area, about 30 feet deep, and then the main aquifer is about 100 feet. Metals don't tend to travel that far through soil. They tend to bind to the soil. But, you know, there was a very highly contaminated site, and I think it's imperative that we discover whether or not the groundwater has been impacted. And then, as I said previously, those properties outside the shooting range owned by the private citizens, there is really no schedule or documented plan for assessing or let alone remediating those sites. The wash that runs through the site, that has not been assessed either, so we're not sure. There has been some assessment, but there hasn't been assessment clear downstream of the wash, and the groundwater issues are still unaddressed. So that's just kind of an overview. So if you have any questions or comments or have any next steps that you might want to suggest.
Councilman Taylor here, a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Is the major cost the transport for the to these hazardous waste facilities? Is that why it's so expensive?
Yeah, it is. So if you look at the half an acre is 3.7, 8 acres is about a little over 4. It's not only the transportation cost because they are going much further,
and the tipping
but it's
fee.
also the tipping fees are much higher. It's basically between $300 and $400 a ton for hazardous waste disposal versus Dos Reales, which is closer to $30, $35.
There's another VRP site up the road in Patagonia that a mining company is working on, and it's to clean up lead as well. So working through ADEQ, you might want to see if there's an opportunity to partner with them, and I know they're going to be looking at actually mining lead. So if especially if you have the T-clip that's at a higher grade, they would probably be really interested in taking that, because as you know, most lead is all recycled, and if you've got lead in high grade, I'm sure they would be amenable to working with the property owner in that area.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but can I address that? The remedial action plan is pretty much set in stone, so it's pretty unlikely that's going to change. But certainly, if we do get to the point where the offsite is cleaned up, I think that would be an excellent idea.
I'm just saying, if you're going to transport it, it's a lot shorter distance to Patagonia than it is to Las Vegas or wherever that site was in Nevada. Mayor, Dr. Felix, do we have any city wells in the impacted area, and if so, or do we test for lead? I assume we do.
I'd have to ask Mr. Kissinger if he's here to address that question. Over Parson.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we don't have any wells that we use in that area. There are some private wells around the area, but they're not. Our wells are to the north on Meadow Hills, and we do a test for lead and copper as required by ADQ, and it's a 3-year cycle that we go through, and we sample about 30 locations through the city, but at the city axis of the water. So it's not on the wells because it's not required for us to test copper and lead. We test at the homes, 30 homes.
And Mayor, for private wells, do you know if there's any requirement from ADQ for them to test their wells on any basis or regular?
Private wells that are for public consumption, they have some requirements. Private wells, they're individual use, they don't have any requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman, can I follow up on that? Mr. Arbo does have a well on his property, and it's not being used for drinking water purposes. There was a sample collected within the last couple of weeks of that well water. There was a lead detect, but it was well below the aquifer water quality standards. However, it was not collected in the most appropriate well that would be used for compliance purposes. But it did give us an idea that at least that is below the aquifer water quality standards, which is what is required by DEQ. But there's definitely need to be much more investigation of the groundwater issues.
What's he using the water for?
I believe he was using them for industrial purposes in the past. I won't swear to that though. Yes. Okay, so I guess it is for residential use, for his own use.
Thank you.
Out of curiosity, how far is that well from the actual site where the shooting range was? The distance?
Mr. Mayor, it's just on the other. It's just north of his property, of the shooting range.
But
so
distance-wise, is that a quarter mile, half a mile?
Within a quarter mile, yes.
Quarter mile?
Yes.
Is it across Mariposa Road?
It's about half an acre away, about the same distance as the firing range. It's right at it's right down by Swift. The entrance to the Arbo property.
Oh, okay. Well, that's across.
That's on the.
You cross Mariposa from the target range.
West. Yeah, it's on the same side. It's about half an acre away from the actual firing range.
Okay. Now, Does that contaminate the soil at all, like for dust or, you know, when the wind blows and the soil's contaminated?
The water, the groundwater?
Well, eventually it falls into the groundwater because if it flows, if we get a monsoon or something flowing through there, it's going to take some of the contaminants wherever it flows. But you said that there's no studies on the surrounding areas, the washes and whatnot.
Right. Well, we did some sampling of the washes, but to answer your question, one of the primary causes of the contamination would be the wind-blown dust, and then also because that's in a low-lying area, there would be a lot of stormwater runoff that would carry the soil containing lead off the site also.
Because we have a hospital close by that's not that far away from that area. Could it reach that? Well, I guess with the wind, anything can happen. But is there any danger of contaminating up there to that point?
Well, there hasn't been a study to evaluate that, but certainly with the levels that exist within the soil, and mind you, the samples that we took were surface samples between 0 and 3 inches deep, and then some deeper samples down to 12 inches. The surface samples were very highly contaminated, yes. You know, up to 15,000 micrograms or milligrams per kilogram. The cleanup standard for residential is 400, so it's orders of magnitude higher.
So is this going to be a continual thing that somebody's going to be testing the soil, or is it going to end right there once they clean out that immediate half acre?
Well, the plan in place and the project that has been funded only addresses the shooting range. It does not
But they're responsible for the surrounding contamination. I mean, that's where it originated.
Yes, and that's part of the reason why the property owners are addressing you folks today. Is
they don't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, the problem was first discovered back when I did the phase 2 almost 10 years ago.
But if it poses any kind of danger to our community, to our residents out there, it should be addressed. And whoever's responsible should be responsible for cleaning up the site. Not only the site, but the surrounding area that's contaminated.
Well, the property owners have gone to pretty significant lengths to make that happen, including, I'm sure you're aware of Mr. Garcia's travails with the government, trying to get them to clean up his property.
All right, I'll let Vice Mayor here.
I'm wondering if our attorney can take a look at the leases that were provided during that time as well.
There were no leases on the adjacent properties.
But where was the lease with?
It was with Mr. Arbo only on the shooting range. The source of the offsite contamination was, there were several sources. One, we conject that there was, the wash was running directly through the shooting range, and so again, it's our best guess that some of the soil that was used for the backstop of the shooting range was transported off of the shooting range onto the adjacent property and used to divert the wash. And as I said, there's bullet fragments spread throughout that site, which was directly as a result of the shooting range.
Can our attorney still have access to those leases?
If I can address the leases, there were leases on the Arbo property. Border Patrol's been using that property since 1972. And in those leases, there's a clause that says they have to return the property to the condition that it was in when they started the lease. And my personal opinion is this is why they're trying to clean the half acre. They want to get out of their lease. They've been ordered by Homeland Security to shut this range down. And they can't do it until they clean this half acre. I'm worried that they're going to clean this half acre, and it's been 9 years since we told them it was contaminated. So I'm worried that...
Mr. Barr, can you speak closer to the mic?
I'm sorry. It's been 9 years since since we found out that this was in 2009, when we found out that this land was contaminated, and they haven't done much about it, but they've been ordered by Homeland Security to shut this range down, and I'm concerned that once they do shut this range down, they get closure from ADEQ, they're going to disappear, and they're going to leave it for us to clean up. And it's expensive, and we didn't cause the mess. So I can provide those leases. We do have them. They're also public record. There was a trial that Border Patrol was found responsible for the lead contamination. So I can provide that to you. I think Dr. Felix already has copies of those leases.
Would that be something our legal department would need to look at, Mr. Carter?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, or Vice Mayor Rojas, I've had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Barr and review those leases as well. I'm in the process of reviewing the various pleadings that were part of the litigation that was that resulted in a settlement with one of the property owners. The main concern that I see and that needs to be addressed, and the city should be at the table when these issues are addressed by the Barr family with the Department of Homeland Security, are the fact that it appears that the Department of Homeland Security is only seeking to remediate a small part of what is a more a small part of basically they're only treating one tree and not the forest. And in essence, I think again the city should be at the table to try and assist in any way we can this effort by the Barr family in seeking to have the entire forest remediated.
Mr. Mayor, if we're going to get legal advice, I'd rather we do it in executive session.
Okay.
You know, I don't want.
It goes, yeah, because I guess it's a little deeper than what it seems.
Especially, I don't want to have discussions on whether or not we should be at the table to imply that we are incurring risks. I'd rather get legal advice to determine what our risk is before we decide to either participate or not.
Okay. Is that
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Lucero, I agree, absolutely. This is a study session, and some of the issues are being addressed, and obviously I would be hesitant to ask the Mayor and Council for some direction with respect to the city's involvement in this matter. So at that, so I concur with Councilman Lucero on that point, but I would, in answering your question, I just wanted to let you know that I have been advised of what's going on, and so I'm continuing to research the matter.
Mr. Mayor, maybe it would just be proper at this point if the city manager and the city attorney prepare a memorandum of factual evidence for us to look over, and then if we need to go into executive session or see if we should have a seat at the table or if we should just let things happen. Maybe if you can give us in the next 60 days a memorandum of factual evidence on this presentation, and then we can come back and tell you these are our next steps.
Okay, and before we finish, there was a couple of other comments from I don't know if it's already been covered by Mr. Barr, but I have something here from Ken Estrada and Todd Whitmore, or
yeah, Todd.
You're Todd. Okay, and Ken, did you have something else that you could add to it, or?
No, sir. Thank you.
It's pretty
Mr.
much been
Mayor.
covered.
Yes, Mr. Whitmer's addressed
Okay.
us.
All right. Well, thank you. Is that so? I guess anybody else have any comments or questions? I think that's the best way of.
Mr. Mayor.
If I may, I just want to let everybody know that there is a representative from ADEQ here. He's here to answer any questions if you guys have any.
This is represent from. Will you please step up to the podium, sir? And this is, I guess, would be open also in case Dr. Felix is Mr. Powell.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Ian Bingham, Communications Director for the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Happy to answer any questions you have for us.
I'm not prepared, Mayor, to ask. Yours is typical.
We heard about it yesterday. I drove down to see what we can do to help. So
well, I'm glad you're
questions
here
you
to help. There's no, we're very grateful for you being here to help, but I would prefer to wait for the memorandum of factual evidence to make sure that we don't get off track with something.
No, I guess, but the only question I would ask is, since you're familiar with contaminations and everything, especially protecting our environment.
Yes, sir, I am.
Would this be a danger to our surrounding community from the initial site where it was used as a range? I don't know. I don't think the knowledge, all the information is out there, but.
Boy, danger is a wide open term. I'm not sure how you answer the word danger.
Well,
obviously, lead does pose a risk to folks if it's ingested or absorbed through the skin. In terms of this area, what I know about this area is not heavily traveled, so there should not be a lot of interaction with the general public from what I know. So in terms of danger, I don't know if I can go that far, but lead, as we all know, does pose a risk. So to the property owners and their families and so forth, yes, they should be protected. But in terms of danger to the community, I don't think we can go that far, sir.
Even for the traffic that goes by there? Because, I mean, it's right there by the Mariposa
You are far more familiar with the area than I am, sir. This is only my third time ever in Nogales.
Okay.
So, but from what I understand, it is an isolated area that is not generally or heavily trafficked. If that's incorrect information, then I apologize. But the information I have, sir, is really just the property owners and their families who are more likely to be impacted than the community from the information
But
I've seen.
they're only like about, what, quarter mile or half a mile from the roadside there?
Lead dust, sir, is not going to be traveling miles in the wind, sir.
No? All right.
If that's what you're looking for.
That's what I wanted to get at. Okay. Well, thank you so much, and then we'll like the rest of the council said, we'll get to further information. Yes,
Mr. Mayor, just a couple of questions for you to think about. First of all, what kind of assistance could you provide, and where would you fit in the discussion here?
The issue here is this is private property. So in our state, we have very little to do with private property unless they're engaging in an industry or business that is subject to our regulation. We typically do not step into private property and start telling one property owner what to do on another property owner's site. So they came to us, the BRP, to get that oversight. They're not required to, and at any point in time, they can actually withdraw from the program, and we have no say whether they stay, whether they go. Once they're in our program, though, to get the NFA that was mentioned earlier, they will have to meet our requirements and show that the site has been remediated to a level that DEQ would be able to then say this site has met the cleanup standards.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilman Maldonado, you have a question?
Yes. What about, okay, you've been approached. The property obviously raised a red flag. Do you have a commitment to the surrounding areas, property owners, to aware anybody of the red flag of that property?
I'm not sure I understand the question. So now that they've come to us, you're asking, do we now notify the surrounding property owners of the work being done?
Of the issue that's being presented or the issue in that property?
So they submitted a work plan to us that is under review. Once we've provided comments, asked them to address some additional things within that work plan. Once they submit those comments back to us, it will actually go out for public comment. So the neighboring property, the city council, whoever wants to voice an opinion, will then have an opportunity to speak. The issue of whether the Border Patrol goes beyond that's really their call. We cannot tell them, again, to go step on another person's property for whatever reasons, even if they're valid reasons. We do not have the authority to mandate. What we have heard is the Border Patrol is looking to honor their obligations. They went to the half acre, went to Congress, received congressional approval and funding to do the half acre. Any additional work would again require congressional approval for funding to do the work. So that is a hurdle that the Border Patrol would have to clear. We have no say. We can't force them to do it, obviously. But should they get the additional funding and want to come back through our voluntary mediation program, they're more than welcome to come in, submit a new work plan for the additional work. We will review, is it adequate? If not, ask them to address whatever deficiencies we've noted, and then again, put that out for public comment. Does that answer your question? If not, I didn't fully get it, so
if not, you guys kind of gave us a new direction that I think we should go before our congressional body, our representatives, and see how they can get the funding for BP to do the rest of the remedial work. And I think that would solve the problem.
That is a choice that the city council can make, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Anybody else? Okay, I guess.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So there's, I guess there's different avenues to resolve this problem. Mostly, I hope it gets resolved by remediating the whole surrounding area, which I don't think is that much more. But we'll see what we can do as far as contacting our congressional folks.
I appreciate it, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Appreciate that. Now, since we deviated, I think we're running kind of hard on time. We do the other two that we have are also kind of in-house.
Can we table those or go into our regular meeting, and if we've got time later,
think,
address them later?
Is that okay with the rest of the council to do a special meeting for these, a special study session? And
yes, I second that.
That was my motion.
That was a motion.
It's a study session.
It's a study session. But anyway, we're kind of running behind on our.
It's okay. Can we take a little break?
And let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back to our regular session. Thank you all so much for your participation and patience with us.